it starts with believing that your people determine your success or your failure. And then it is staying focused on the two things that my grandfather was focused on, the quality and the service we provide our customers. And that provides a differentiated shopping experience. And in these days of a very competitive environment, you have to differentiate that shopping experience because people have so many choices.
It starts with believing, he said. Joe Heinen had a belief that he could put a butcher store into that building in this neighborhood, Kinsman and Lee Road, now Chagrin and Lee, and become the top distributor of quality meats anywhere in the region. He was fairly successful fairly quickly, but even in 1929, customers wanted more. They wanted groceries. So Joe left that building and moved directly across the street, putting a building here. Now the company eventually moved that building further east, but then returned to the spot where they once were and the spot where Heinen still stands even today.
This was a market dominated by smaller family-run businesses and just a ton of families who ran grocery stores.
When Joe Heinen's store opened in 1929, Cleveland had 5,300 stores that sold food. Today, Joe Heinen's family still does, while names like Palmer's, Moletti's, Merman's, Fisher Foods, and Nyberg are long gone, many falling as use of the automobile increased. Joe's grandsons Tom and Jeff operate the Heinen's franchise now, following in the footsteps of their father, but both say that what worked for Cleveland early drastically changed in the 1990s and early 2000s.
The scale of business started to change, and a lot of families didn't keep up with that, and so we're the kind of the last remaining family chain, other than Dave's, in the Cleveland market, where most markets are dominated by the Krogers of the world that are, whatever they are, 100 times larger than we are.
But chains of that magnitude, they say, lose a little something, that connection to the people, that loyalty to the brand. As we talked, interactions like this
That jackfruit.
Okay.
All right.
were not uncommon.
Our customers are pretty vocal about what they like and what they don't like.
They're also vocal about where they want the produce, the meats, and the dairy sold here to originate.
Let's talk sourcing. When I look at your corporate website, there's something like almost 400 local producers who supply Heinen's. That's got to be key to making this work, the fact that you deal with people in and around Ohio and a little bit beyond.
Yeah, about 20 years ago, we realized how important that was, and we had always bought from a few local producers, but about 20 years ago, we kind of increased our fervor for that, and it kind of has translated to, we probably purchased from over 200 local farmers, and then another 200 producers locally who produce, packaged goods. And
How does that work? Do they come to you or do you go to them?
It's a little bit of both.
I look at a place like Trader Joe's, which is national, or Giant Eagle, which is regional. They can do things you can't do, but you can do things they can't do.
We can get the artisan producer who can make enough product for our 23 stores, but he could never produce enough for Giant Eagle. And so I think that's been a huge advantage for us. And I also think, I always talk about the big companies are like cruise ships. We're a speedboat. We can change directions much quicker and much faster.
But changing direction isn't always quick, nor was the decision to do what was sure to become a financial albatross for the company, placing a full-service grocery store into downtown Cleveland. Residents had requested it, but the population core needed to sustain a grocery store really wasn't there. The space where a store could be built really wasn't readily apparent. But an entreaty from a developer created a spark, an idea the Heinen brothers tussled with, but eventually embraced, using the historic Cleveland Trust Rotunda building and its early 20th century grandeur in a 21st century conversion. Renowned architect George B. Post had created a central banking complex in the heart of the city in 1907, which with imagination was restored and repurposed to become a supermarket like no one had ever seen. February 25, 2015 marked the return of a grocer to the Center City.
I think one of the most amazing things about this building here is that it was vacant since 1992. We opened in February of 2015, and the building was in remarkably good shape.
The county commissioners did a lot of things wrong, but they kept the roof repaired and they kept the heat on. And so it was really in remarkable shape given how much it had been closed.
All the railings look pretty much like they do now. I think the murals were all very much
The murals
intact.
were in great shape.
13 murals, it should be noted, placed on the 85-foot-high, 61-foot-wide dome by noted artist Francis David Millet, who served in the Civil War and died on the maiden voyage of the RMS Titanic.
The challenge was, how do you preserve the integrity of the space that was built, but at the same time make it a shopping experience that works for the customer? And it's lots of different iterations on that theme.
Iterations on envisioning how a grocery store fits into a space designed as a bank. The produce level went into former offices. Shelves of boxed foods could be easily configured, but spaces where artisans now hand out salads and deli were adapted straight away from where a teller once handed out cash.
Believe it or not, is about 75% of what we carry in a larger suburban store.
The sacrifice goes both ways. A few less items for clients, a few less dollars for the firm.
Yeah, when the Geist brothers came to us, they also understood that, or we helped them understand, maybe is a better way to say it, that we would never make money here for a very long time, and therefore they couldn't make money. And that's not the typical developer mindset. I'm going to do something and not make any money at it, but I think they understood this was important to Cleveland, and it's really why we did it. But as lifelong Clevelanders, we understood this change in momentum that was happening with residential living downtown. And what we understood as we looked seriously at this was that having a viable option to go grocery shopping was kind of an important component to continue that growth. We have a space behind here that we rent out for events, and we're not the place for a business meeting, but for after business wine and beer hour, we're the perfect place. There weren't very many options for people to buy wine and beer for off-premise consumption. And so we thought we would put a big beer and wine thing. We do very unique things with wines by the glass, beer by the glass, not exactly so unique, but we do that as well. And we do kombucha by the glass. And so there's a lot of options for people to enjoy a beverage of their choice.
Literally, they're adding about 1,000 residences a year. And so as long as they stay on path with that, Heinen's will be okay.
Right, but I think the Geigers next door is a great example. Another family-run business that had been in the suburbs just like we had been. And once they saw that we had done this, they had said, we want to build a store, and if Heinen's can do it, we should do it. And so I think that we were, the catalyst for, we know we were the catalyst for Geigers. And so that's the momentum that we hope continues to happen.
Though adamant in their love for their hometown, there was also a need to see how the brand would translate. And after research, it was Illinois where they thought might best fit. And in August of 2012, the first of what is now 4 stores opened in Chicagoland.
People ask us all the time, why did you go to Chicago? And it wasn't because we thought we needed to be bigger, or that we needed more headaches. We really did it because of our people. We recognized that if we were going to attract and retain people who wanted more responsibility, we had to grow, and we weren't convinced that Cleveland had that many opportunities for us to grow. And so we picked a city where we thought over time, not our lifetime, but over time we could have a 10, 12, 15 store chain over there as well. And so it was really about people.
There is a 4th generation of Heinen's in the wings. Jeff's 27-year-old son, Tom's daughter, working in the system now, and probably itching to take over before their dads really want to step aside. But keeping that connection to Cleveland, to operating a store where your customers are your neighbors, and to their great-grandfather's vision.